It wasn't too late. I could still go back. To what? I asked myself with a slightly hysterical laugh. I had nothing to go back to. Everything in my life was gone, except Coventry. I rolled into town, and even though it was dark, there were still people milling around. Most of them turned and stared at me like I had at least 3 heads. Some were probably because they recognized me, while the others saw nothing but a stranger driving into their town in a beat-up old car after dark. When I passed the bed and breakfast, I briefly considered pulling in. I could stay there for the night and not bother my parents until the next morning. They didn't even know I was coming. I hadn't called. They would know soon enough, though. I'd already seen a couple of the aunties, and they'd be on the phone with my parents in a heartbeat. I drove the rest of the way to my parents' street, but I sat down the road for a while. It was like I was begging the universe to give me one more shot at not coming crawling back home. It was not meant to be. Nothing happened except I wasted more time. Plus, I'd just made the promise to embrace who I was. Being a witch isn't bad, Kinsley, I said to myself. You're just being a spoiled brat. You're mad because you were wrong and you don't want to admit it. You never should have left, and now you feel like a fool for having to come crawling back. But I knew my parents would take me back with open arms, even if I hadn't visited them in 13 years. Tears began to spill down my cheeks. How prideful and stubborn I had been. It didn't matter if I had to move back in with my parents at 30. As I pulled into the driveway, my heart began to pound. All of the lights were out at Hangman's house. The place looked completely abandoned. I hadn't seen my parents, but I had spoken to them. Neither of them had mentioned going on vacation or moving away. Maybe they're just in the back of the house, I thought. I walked up the front steps and considered whether I should just walk in or knock first. It was the house I'd grown up in, but Hangman's house hadn't been my home for a long time. When I raised my fist to knock, the door popped open. "Okay," I said. "Hello?" No one answered, but the door opened a little more. Having been raised in Coventry, my first suspicion was ghosts. It was also possible that the house itself just wanted me to come in. Hangman's house had a mind of its own, and it tended to do little things to manipulate its inhabitants' lives. "Hello?" I said again as I stepped through the door. "Is anyone here? Mom? Dad?" I looked around, and the furniture was all gone. There was no stuff of life. There was no furniture, but there was nothing else to indicate that people lived in the house either. There were no books, magical supplies, trinkets, or photos on the walls. The house looked completely abandoned. "What in the world?" I asked as I took a step deeper into the living room. It was right then that the red and blue lights flashed across the walls. The blip of a siren followed. I froze. My parents weren't in the house, and I had no proof I was even supposed to be there.